After the Clone Wars, the Empire faced a critical problem. Clone soldiers were aging and their numbers were dwindling, while stormtroopers proved demonstrably inferior replacements. General Rom Moak believed the solution lay in cybernetic enhancement. If they could augment remaining clone veterans with technology like Darth Vader's, they could create soldiers combining clone intelligence with enhanced strength and durability. Early phases utilized cybernetic augmentation of clones, replacing up to 70% of their organs with mechanical components, creating elite soldiers with superhuman capabilities. However, psychological strain from forced cyborg conversion drove many insane, and the project was shelved as resources diverted to the Death Star. General Rom later revived the program by creating entirely synthetic battle droids, mimicking clone capabilities without requiring organic subjects. The Phase 1 and Phase 2, Dark Troopers were equipped with frick armor resistant to lightsabers and blaster fire, assault cannons, missile pods, and jump packs, granting incredible mobility and verticality in combat. Phase 3 variants were the ultimate evolution, nearly 3 meters tall with integrated heavy weaponry including rotary cannons and thermal detonators, programmed with tactical AI allowing independent or coordinated operations. The program was conducted aboard the Ark Hammer, a factory ship jumping randomly through hyperspace to avoid detection, known only to Vader and select Imperial commanders. The few battles where Dark Troopers were deployed demonstrated devastating effectiveness. A single Phase 3 unit could decimate an entire squad of conventional soldiers, making them a nightmare scenario for any opposing force. The World Devastators represent perhaps the most audaciously destructive project the Empire ever conceived. Massive, self-replicating superweapons designed to consume entire planets and convert their raw materials into more world devastators and other Imperial war machines. These gargantuan constructs stood kilometers tall, equipped with massive tractor beams that could strip entire continental plates from a planet's surface, advanced refinery systems that could process rock, metal, and organic matter into usable components, and automated factories that could manufacture star destroyers, TIE fighters, and additional world devastators while literally eating a world alive. The strategic concept was horrifying in its efficiency. Deploy a world devastator to an enemy world, and within weeks, the entire planet would be reduced to rubble while the Empire harvested unlimited resources and created an ever growing fleet of warships manufactured from the destroyed planet itself. However, the world devastators were incredibly expensive to construct and required enormous amounts of energy to operate, making them impractical to mass produce. And their slow speed meant they could be targeted and destroyed before completing their mission if the defending force had adequate warning and firepower. Only a few prototypes were ever completed before the Empire's collapse, and the program was eventually abandoned, as Imperial planners realized that the resources required to build world devastators would have been better spent constructing traditional star destroyers and battle stations. Project Harvester was one of the darkest and most secretive initiatives undertaken by the Galactic Empire, created to identify, capture, and exploit Force-sensitive children across the galaxy for Imperial use. Operated under the authority of Emperor Palpatine and Darth Vader, the program was managed through the Imperial Inquisitorius, which repurposed old Jedi archives and Republic census data to detect potential younglings before they could be found by surviving Jedi or Rebel sympathizers. Once identified, the children were abducted by specialized Imperial agents, often purge troopers or inquisitors, and taken to remote facilities where they were subjected to psychological conditioning, experimentation, and in some cases, early training intended to test their potential as future dark side operatives or experimental force conduits. Some reports suggest that force-rich energy extracted from these captives was later used in related Imperial bioengineering and cloning research, creating a direct link between Project Harvester and later dark science efforts like the Dark Trooper and Project Blackwing experiments. Though officially denied in all Imperial records, the project's existence became an open secret within intelligence circles, symbolizing the Empire's willingness to twist even the most sacred aspect of the galaxy, the Force, into a tool of fear and domination. The Executor-class Star Dreadnought represented the Empire's ambition to move beyond the standard Star Destroyer design and create a new class of supercapital ship that would serve as the ultimate expression of Imperial naval power, combining the firepower of multiple Star Destroyers with command facilities capable of coordinating entire fleets across entire star systems. The Executor stood nearly twice the size of a standard Star Destroyer, measuring over 19 kilometers in length, with armor plating 3 times thicker, reactor output sufficient to power shields, weapon systems, and propulsion simultaneously at maximum efficiency, and hangar bays capable of carrying thousands of starfighters and support vessels. The engineering challenges were staggering. Creating a ship of that size required new metallurgical techniques, advanced hyperdrive designs capable of moving such a massive vessel through hyperspace, and power management systems that had never been tested at that scale. The Empire constructed only a handful of Executor-class ships before the program was effectively ended by the destruction of the original Executor by rebel forces. The remaining dreadnoughts were retained as flagship vessels for high-ranking Imperial commanders, but their enormous cost and resource consumption made further expansion of the class impossible as Imperial resources became increasingly strained. Later variants were theorized and partially designed, including the Super Executor class with even larger dimensions and the Eclipse class with integrated super laser technology. But these designs remained conceptual as the Empire's economic and military situation deteriorated, making these projects impossible to realize before the regime's ultimate collapse. Deep within Imperial research facilities hidden across the galaxy, scientists conducted experiments in biological warfare under the codename Project Blackwing, developing weaponized pathogens and engineered organisms designed to devastate enemy populations without destroying infrastructure or resources. The project produced several horrifying iterations: genetically engineered plague strains capable of targeting specific genetic markers, effectively weaponizing species-specific diseases that could eliminate entire alien populations while leaving Imperial troops unaffected, sterility viruses designed to render enemy populations unable to reproduce, effectively committing genocide across generations, and neural parasites capable of controlling or destroying brain function in humanoid hosts. Imperial scientists justified these programs as necessary defensive measures against the Rebel Alliance's increasingly effective insurgency, arguing that conventional military solutions were becoming inadequate and that biological solutions offered a decisive advantage. However, the moral hazard was staggering. The creation of bioweapons violated every ethical standard and created catastrophic risks if containment protocols failed, potentially unleashing pathogens that could decimate Imperial populations as easily as enemy populations. The program was eventually suspended not due to ethical concerns, but because the unpredictability of biological weapons made them unreliable for military objectives, and the risk of accidental release within Imperial-controlled space was deemed unacceptable even by Imperial leadership. Project Blackwing was classified at the highest levels, and its existence was denied by Imperial authorities, buried in archives that were scattered and destroyed during the Empire's final collapse, making the full extent of the program's achievements and horrors largely unknown to the galaxy. The Empire's fascination with controlling the Force extended beyond training Force-sensitive agents and infiltrating Jedi. Imperial researchers became obsessed with the possibility of creating Force-resistant or Force-immune soldiers and technology, and their research into the small tree-dwelling creatures called Isalamir provided unexpected breakthroughs. Isalamir naturally generate Force suppression fields, creating bubbles of space where the Force cannot be used, making them invaluable to Imperial research into Force-blocking technology. Imperial scientists conducted extensive studies into Isalamir biology, attempting to understand the mechanisms behind their Force immunity and seeking to replicate or artificially enhance the effect through genetic engineering or technological means. The research produced several practical applications: Force suppression collars that could be fitted to Force-sensitive prisoners, rendering them powerless; prototype armor systems incorporating Isalamir biology or synthetic equivalents, allowing soldiers to operate in close proximity to Force users without being vulnerable to telekinesis, lightning, or other powers; and shipboard systems designed to create Force-dead zones within capital ships, protecting command centers and critical systems from Force-based infiltration. However, the applications remained limited. Creating artificial Force suppression proved far more difficult than expected. The biological approach suffered from Isalamir mortality issues in captivity, and even successful Force suppression fields proved unreliable at scale. The program continued in various forms throughout the Imperial period, consuming enormous resources with limited strategic payoff. though its theoretical potential kept it classified and funded despite its practical failures. Grand Moff Tarkin envisioned a philosophy of imperial military dominance built on the principle that fear and the threat of absolute destruction would prevent rebellion more effectively than conventional military might, and this vision spawned the Tarkin Initiative, a cascade of increasingly ambitious superweapon projects designed to create implements of such overwhelming destructive power that mere knowledge of their existence would break enemy will to resist. The Death Star represented the ultimate manifestation of this philosophy, a moon-sized space station equipped with a super laser capable of destroying entire planets with a single shot, designed not just as a weapon, but as a symbol of imperial invincibility that would psychologically devastate any population that witnessed a planet's destruction. However, the Tarkin Initiative encompassed far more ambitious projects beyond the Death Star. The Galaxy Gun, a planetary superweapon capable of firing projectiles across galactic distances with planet-destroying yields. The Sun Crusher, a warship capable of triggering stellar explosions by injecting matter into a star's core, effectively destroying entire star systems. And the Eclipse-class Star Destroyer, a capital ship mounting a super laser similar to the Death Star but operating at smaller scale. Each successive weapon grew more destructive, more resource-intensive, and more destabilizing to Imperial economy and logistics. The cumulative cost of these superweapon programs contributed significantly to Imperial financial collapse, as resources that could have been spent on conventional military strength, infrastructure, or conquest were instead diverted to these increasingly impractical megaprojects. The Tarkin Initiative ultimately demonstrated a fundamental strategic failure. Overwhelming firepower without the conventional military strength to project it across the galaxy proved useless, and the Empire's obsession with superweapons left it vulnerable to small, mobile rebel forces that refused to engage the Imperial military on conventional terms. As Palpatine's grip on power became increasingly absolute and paranoia about potential threats consumed his thinking, Imperial researchers undertook the most classified project in Imperial history, Project Palpatine, an initiative designed to ensure the Emperor's survival even if the Empire fell, the military collapsed, and conventional defeat became inevitable. The project encompassed multiple approaches: cloning technology that could create replacement bodies if the Emperor's physical form was destroyed, allowing his consciousness or spirit to transfer into a new vessel; research into Sith immortality techniques from ancient Sith records, seeking methods to preserve the Emperor's existence beyond death itself; construction of hidden strongholds and fortress worlds scattered throughout the unknown regions, designed to serve as fallback positions where Palpatine could retreat and rebuild Imperial power if the galactic seat of power fell. Imperial scientists worked in absolute secrecy, operating from facilities so classified that even high-ranking Imperial officers were unaware of their existence. The cloning technology developed under this program represented the most advanced bioengineering the Empire ever achieved, incorporating techniques that would prove crucial to post-Imperial warlords and successor states decades after the Emperor's death. Project Palpatine succeeded in its fundamental objective. Years after Palpatine's apparent death at Endor, his consciousness and will continued to influence Imperial remnants, suggesting that at least some aspect of the project achieved its intended goal, though the full extent of the program's success remains unknown, buried in archives destroyed during the Empire's collapse. The project stands as the ultimate expression of Palpatine's arrogance, the belief that through sufficient resources, technology, and ambition, even death itself could be defeated and his rule could endure eternally. But have you ever thought about who are the most powerful Sith Lords?